everyone, and welcome to Sports Outlet. I'm your host, Harrison Duhr, and I'm joined here today by Chris Drabik and Sal Ferraioli. Thanks for joining us today, guys. Appreciate it. Today, we'll be focusing on the NFL in the first 3 weeks of the season. Our first discussion question is, with only 3 teams left undefeated, who is the biggest 3-0 shock? The Eagles, the Cardinals, or the Bengals? Sal, let's start with you.
I'm going to go ahead and give this one to the Eagles. I mean, coming into the season, they had a pretty good season last year with Nick Foles having like an amazing season with the best passer rating in a long time. Coming into the season, we kind of expected that to be the same thing, but with the way they've started out these games, going into the second half of all 3 of their games, they've been down by double digits. And then who expected them to come back in all 3 of those games and come back to be 3-0? I just think that's extremely impressive, and I think that's why they are the biggest shock, because going into the second half, just no one expected them to come back all 3 times. And watching the games, you're just sitting there in awe about how they're making this comeback each week. And I just think that they are really impressive with these 3-0.
Yeah, especially since LaShawn McCoy hasn't even really been playing up to his caliber.
Exactly.
You know, they've been doing with Darren Sproles and guys like Jeremy Maclin to step up rather than their big star LaShawn McCoy. So it's very interesting to see that. Chris, what are your thoughts?
For me, Harrison, this one's easy. You go no further than the Arizona Cardinals. If you would have told me that Carson Palmer and the Arizona Cardinals were 3-0, I wouldn't have believed you. If you would have told me Drew Stanton and the Cardinals were 3-0, I would have told me you were lying. The biggest thing here, Drew Stanton stepped in and has played like a very solid, starting capable NFL quarterback. Their defense, despite a few injuries in the linebacking core, and stepping up is Andre Ellington and at running back after a Week 1 injury. So far, Michael Floyd and Larry Fitzgerald have done a great job stepping up for Drew Stanton here early on in the season. And Drew Stanton's been a backup quarterback his whole entire life, and coming in, stepping in, and being 3-0 thus far. You know, the Eagles were a great offensive team last year. Sure, LaShawn McCoy hasn't been that great so far, and they've had a few early comebacks, but I could see the Eagles being 3-0. Even the Bengals, a great defense. Andy Dalton, despite that ridiculous contract he got in the offseason, he's played very well, and he's had actually a receiving touchdown so far this year. But the Arizona Cardinals, they were a solid team in that tough NFC West. For Drew Stanton to step in place of Carson Palmer and go 3-0 so far, I still don't believe it. I'm watching it every single week.
Yeah. Being a Giants fan, actually seeing Drew Stanton in live action Week 2, I could definitely see that. He, for a backup quarterback, he looks like he knows what he's doing.
Play. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to our second question. With usual powerhouses struggling in the early going, who is in more trouble going forward, the Packers, the Saints, or the 49ers? Chris, we'll start with you this time.
This one hits home for me because I'm a giant Green Bay Packer fan. But the thing we have here is quarterback play. So far, we've seen Aaron Rodgers struggle at times, Colin Kaepernick really struggle at times, and Drew Brees kind of play all right. They have a couple close losses late. The thing that gives me the edge here is those 3 quarterbacks. Drew Brees and Aaron Rodgers have been getting it done for years. This is Colin Kaepernick's 3rd year as a starter, and we still, despite the big contract and Super Bowl and NFC Championship game, we don't know yet what to make of him. So right now, going forward, I give the improvement of the Packers and Saints defenses, although Packers have struggled early on, and just the 49ers, a couple injuries on defense, and Colin Kaepernick hasn't been steady for years like Drew Brees and Aaron Rodgers. So early on, I would definitely have to say that the 49ers are in the most trouble here right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to agree. I'm going to go with the 49ers. I think they've been playing well early in the game, and in the second half, they've been really struggling. They've been outscored 52-3 in their 3 games so far in the second half, and I think they just really need to step it up. If they want to win games, it's really when they need to close down the game and really get the win is in the second half. Next week, they're going into the 3-0 Eagles, who have been dominating in the second half, and that's if they need to step it up in the second half if they really want to improve their record and move on in the season.
All right, guys, thank you. That'll do it for our first segment, but when we come back, we'll jump into our rapid fire segment. Stay tuned with us. Welcome back. Now it's time for our rapid fire segment. I'll ask each analyst 3 questions, and they'll have 30 seconds to respond. Sal, your first question is, how much longer can the Jets rely on the one and only Geno Smith?
I don't think they ever could have really relied on him. I mean, at this point in the season, Jets are 1-2 right now. They had a win Week 1, but Geno Smith, he's doing the same thing Mark Sanchez did. He goes in, and you just don't know what to expect out of him. So far, he's got 3 touchdowns and 4 interceptions, but he hasn't been good at just closing the game like the Jets need him to. Last week, they had a potential game-tying drive, and they couldn't close the deal. And I think Geno just really needs to step it up. And I mean, they have Mike Vick waiting to play. So I don't really know what you can expect out of Geno. I don't know if he doesn't step up, he's got it done.
Yeah. I think it's safe to say Geno Smith is the definition of mediocre. Chris, let's move on to your first question. I know there's still a long season to go, but what do you see as the early Super Bowl matchup this far?
So far, we've seen a couple shocking teams be 3-0, like the Eagles, the Cardinals, and the Bengals, like you mentioned earlier. But the team I like out of the AFC so far is, in fact, the Cincinnati Bengals. Going into the season, I don't know what it is, Harrison, but I get a feeling that I'm going to see the Denver Broncos kind of fade out come playoff time, and stepping up, playing off that contract is going to be Andy Dalton and the Cincinnati Bengals. We've seen with a terrific passing attack led by A.J. Green, Mohamed Sanu stepped up at times also. Gio Bernard's been a stud out of the backfield. Their defense now, the back seven is great. Geno Atkins is back off an injury. I think they're going to be a solid team offensively and defensively the entire year. And the NFC, the choice is easy. It's the Seattle Seahawks. Their defense, no one can score on them, and that's 30 seconds, I guess.
Yeah. With the Bengals, though, even with Andy Dalton and Marvin Lewis's playoff struggles, you see them finally overcoming that hump this year? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely do.
Okay, we'll have to wait and see. Sal, your second question. What injuries so far this season will have the biggest impact on their given team?
I'm going to go back to the 49ers. We have Bowman and Smith for them on defense, and both of them being out is really hurting them, especially in the second half like we talked about before. I think last year they made it to the NFC Championship game, and they were coming back into this season wanting to be another powerhouse, but these injuries on defense is really hurting them, and they're getting outscored by so much. Like I said, 52-3 in the second half, and it's really hurting them more than anything right now.
Okay. Chris, your second question. With all the hype still surrounding the one and only Richard Sherman, is he still the best corner in football?
Well, there was a little controversy after the first 2 weeks. Week 1, the Packers didn't throw to his side of the field. Week 2, we saw Keenan Allen supposedly expose him. But you know what? Richard Sherman is, in fact, the best corner in football. He shuts down any receiver at any given time. And the likes of Joe Hayden and Patrick Peterson, who were run their mantle this offseason, including Earl Revis also, they have not done as much as Richard Sherman nearly has so far early way in the season.
Okay. I think it's safe to say Aaron Andrews knows that Richard Sherman is the best corner in the league after last year.
He definitely does.
All right. Finally, Sal, for your last question. With news regarding Ray Rice still swirling around the league, is the NFL properly handling the situation?
I really don't think they are. I think every week now we're seeing new information about how they had access to the video and then they didn't have access to the video, and then they're making everything about the video rather than actually disciplining Rice. I mean, obviously we all saw what he did, and I think that's a terrible thing. And I just think the NFL themselves really didn't take much action. It was more of his team, the Ravens, actually disciplining him more than anything. And I think the NFL is just worried about their image, and I think that's how they are most of the time. So I think they need to actually discipline him more than actually just protecting themselves.
And do you think Roger Goodell should be on the hot seat for what he's been doing?
I think he should.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And Chris, for your last question, will Ray Rice ever play in the NFL again?
Well, as much as I hate to see it, and I would not want to see him in the NFL again, unfortunately, I think he's going to play in the NFL again. So far, the NFL, it's been like a new, terrible story each week, and I think with time, everyone might forget about this, and someone will go ahead and take a shot at him, not this year, but most likely next year, the year after. And unfortunately, I think we'll see Ray Rice in the NFL again. Yeah,
I mean, we've seen it before with obviously Michael Vick, the Eagles taking a chance on him, guys like Dante Stallworth of the DUI.
Yeah,
so it's certainly not been, it wouldn't be the first time the NFL's done something like this. But anyway, that will do it for our rapid fire segment. After the break, we're going to wrap things up with our newest segment, Coming At You. Stay with us. Welcome back. It's now time for our last segment, Coming At You, where each analyst is given the opportunity to ask the other a question made up on the spot. Each analyst will have about a minute to respond. Chris, we'll start with you. What's your question?
All right, well, Sal, as a Jets fan, I need to know, how much longer do you want to see Geno Smith as starting quarterback for the Jets, and would you eventually want to see Mike Vick step in there if Geno continues to struggle?
That's a great question. I mean, Geno, like you said, he's the king of mediocre. I don't know what to expect going into each week with him. He just shocks me sometimes. So I think it would be interesting to see Mike Vick get in there sometimes. Because, I mean, as the Jets go into the season, they kind of don't really care about their record anymore because they're not winning, so why would they care? So maybe we will see Mike Vick a little later in the season. I think that'd be really cool to see. I mean, you've seen him a couple plays here and there, and he hasn't really been contributing in those few plays. Obviously, he hasn't gotten a real shot. Yeah. But I think it would be interesting to see him step in there for a little bit.
Personally, I want to see Vick because I think the Jets have a defense to make the playoffs, and they can get there with Michael Vick as a quarterback.
And there's always Tim Tebow or Chad Pennington. If it really comes to our last options there. Sal, what is your question?
Well, as you said, you were a Packers fan. So do you think Aaron Rodgers is doing a good job of stepping up after Brett Favre?
I think in general, yes, he absolutely has. So far, he's delivered one Super Bowl ring thus far, and he's just done a great job of stepping into the huge shoes that Brett Favre left. You got to remember, Brett Favre basically didn't speak to Aaron Rodgers once he was becoming, the new starting quarterback. So he's pretty much overcome a ton of adversity here, despite, now they become friends. But I think so far, Aaron Rodgers, he's the king of Titletown right now, and he's done a great job, I think, stepping in for Brett Favre.
He's also the king of the discount double check as well.
All right.
Well, that'll just about do it here for today on Sports Outlet. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, if you'd like to join LTV, like us on Facebook or email us at ltv@tcnj.edu. For Sal Ferraioli and Chris Drabik, I'm Harrison Duhr. Have a good one, everyone.